Well, good evening. My name is Robert O'Brien. I am a past chairman of the Churchill Society. I served as chairman for 3 years, and I succeeded Professor Peter Russell and Dan Tisch, and I'm very glad to see that both of those past chairs are here this evening. I've been asked by the board of directors, upon which I still serve after all these years, is to thank John Fraser for his timely and his address and his equally timely book, which we will all look forward to reading. Our first thoughts, of course, are with John and his wife, and truly we'd prefer for him to be at this podium speaking live. But he has that Churchillian sense of duty, and there he is, dressed in a tuxedo, addressing us by video this evening, unprepared to fulfill an obligation which he agreed to months ago. John Fraser joins a long list of illustrious Churchillian speakers at our dinners. Churchill's official biographer, Sir Martin Gilbert, twice, U.S. broadcaster Chris Matthews, Lynn Olson, Alan Packwood. Last year, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who dedicated his speech to Sir Winston Churchill. Churchill's own grandchildren, Nicholas Soames and Celia Sands, twice. And twice, we were graced by the presence of Churchill's daughter, Mary the Lady Soames, who was an author herself and a patron of our society and of ICS Canada. John's last book was written at the time of the Diamond Jubilee in 2012, and it was called The Secret of the Monarchy. And I have it on very good authority that Lady Soames was presented personally with a copy of John Fraser's book. And I have it on very good authority that Lady Soames, who was a member of the Order of the Garter and a close friend of Her Majesty the Queen, was excited and delighted to receive the book and was looking forward to receiving that book. And so it's appropriate that as Lady Soames look forward to reading his last book, we look forward to reading his current book. And we thank you, John, for your knowledge and for about the monarchy. And we think the very best of you and your wife, and Godspeed to both of you in a quick recovery. So I have a second duty tonight. The second duty is to officially propose a toast to Sir Winston Churchill. 20 years ago, the keynote speaker at the Churchill Society annual dinner was Andrew Roberts. The topic of his address then was Churchill, the state of the debate. We still debate Churchill 20 years later. Andrew Roberts wrote, many of you may know, and it may be on your bookshelf, the magnificent, best-selling 982-page biography of Churchill, Churchill Walking with Destiny. It was written in 2018. I received an email from Andrew Roberts about a month ago advising that King Charles, after approval by his mother during the Platinum Jubilee, has recently elevated Andrew Roberts to the peerage, to the House of Lords. He will go, and so he will become Lord Andrew Roberts. What a great choice. The last time I heard Andrew Roberts speak was before COVID. It was at an ICS dinner in 2019, Randy. And I had an opportunity to speak to him, and I told him that when I came to the end of his 982-page treatise on Churchill, that I was actually quite moved. And there were tears in my eyes, and the story was so movingly and so well told. And Lord Roberts thanked me for that, and then he says that many people have shared that with him. And I then had the temerity to ask him, it was so good, any chance for a sequel? And his reply was quite frank, Robert, he died. And of course, Churchill did die 57 years ago. And there is a younger generation who, because of our educational system and because history isn't taught as it once was, don't fully understand and don't fully appreciate the significance of this great man who saved and championed democracy at its darkest hour. Lord Roberts' comments to me that evening in 2009 caused me to pause and reflect. What is it about this man who was walking with destiny and who continues to be remembered and whose legacy our society has over the course of 39 annual dinners celebrated? Something that strikes me when I see interviews with members of the illustrious January 6th Committee in the United States, scholars, historians, Americans talking about the soul of the nation, it is that in the background, there's always a bookcase. And in the background bookcase, there's always this book, Churchill. And it's a walking illustration to all of those political leaders that this was a man of importance, and it's conveying a message through the media. And it's because Churchill was the living embodiment of democracy. You know, last February, after Putin invaded the Ukraine, it was President Zelensky who personified and resurrected Churchill and found his own inner Churchill, standing up against the forces of autocracy, and declaring and echoing, as Churchill himself did in 1940, we will fight in the sea and in the air. We will fight in the forests, fields, shores. We will fight on the land and in the streets. We will fight on the banks of the different rivers of the Dnieper. Churchill didn't say that exactly, but it mirrors exactly what Churchill said in 1940. And then he went on to say, we shall never surrender. Sir Winston in 1944 observed, the longer you can look back, then the farther you can look forward. And he was right. 100 years ago in 1922, Churchill's life was at a turning point. He was headed for oblivion. Churchill lost the election in which David Lloyd George was prime minister in October of 1922. The Liberal Party, of which Churchill was part, was dead forever, never to return to power again. Churchill lost his seat in Dundee after having served in Parliament for 21 consecutive uninterrupted years. He had the good humor to note that he had not only lost his seat, but he lost his appendix during that election campaign. But the funny thing about that year, 1922, is tragically he and Clementine also suffered the loss of their beloved 3-year-old daughter, Marigold, from septicemia. And he lost his beloved, well-known celebrity mother, Lady Jenny Churchill, months before that. His career in 1922 was in ashes. And if he had left it there, we wouldn't be doing this dinner. But he picked himself up, as he always did in life. And he reinvented himself, this time as a conservative. And he was re-elected 2 years later, becoming Chancellor of the Exchequer. And 2 years after that, he had his first encounter with Princess Elizabeth, as recounted by John Fraser. And that was the beginning of a long-standing relationship, with him becoming the first Prime Minister of Queen Elizabeth, and his influence was felt until her passing this past September. Churchill had that amazing ability to look back and look forward, and an amazing resiliency. As for eternal life, after he died, Churchill commented, words are the only things that last forever. He's correct. His writings, his words, his principles, his command of the English language, and mobilizing it into battle, even in Ukraine in 2022, demonstrates a kind of immortality that survives today. In 2006, Sir Martin Gilbert wrote a book and dedicated it specifically to our society. and the work of our society. It was called The Will of the People. And the primary lesson from Churchill's life is that democracy is well worth protecting. And it reigns supreme in the face of what we now see south of the border, in particular: alternative facts, big lies, election denialism, anti-Semitism without criticism, social media misrepresentation, over-partisanship, apathy, taking democracy for granted. And so we complete our 39th annual dinner. It's the cause of parliamentary democracy that endures. And that's why our society exists. It's its commitment to democracy that has prevailed for 39 years, and it continues to exist. And whatever form beyond tonight our society progresses to, we will continue to champion democracy. Churchill may have died, as Sir Andrew Roberts told me, sadly, several years ago, but each and every one of us here tonight, Irwin Cotler, John Fraser, our past chairman, Randy Barber, who's recently been reelected to political office, our society, we are the sequel, and we are the future. And by looking to the past, we have a clear vision of the future, which is vital in protecting our democracy and fundamental freedoms. Each of us in this room tonight, we're the ones like Churchill who are walking with destiny. And we invite you to join our society in its work, not just by your presence tonight, but in the days and the years ahead. I'm going to end by quoting a noted American. I love the quote, but he served in an elected Senate for 47 years in a less turbulent time than now. But he said, and it applies to our society, the work goes on, the cause endures, the hope still lives, and the dreams shall never die. So, after that long toast, ladies and gentlemen, to Sir Winston Churchill and to the endurance and upholding of the cause, hopes, and dreams of democracy. And here's to our walking with destiny. I'd ask you to raise your glass and raise it in the honor of Sir Winston Churchill and to our democratic rights and freedoms. Thank you.